Okay, so I'm just gonna start with a little introduction for you. I'm Katie, and this is Jessica Ofray. She is a licensed professional counselor in the state of Connecticut and has a master's degree in clinical mental health counseling. She views counseling as a process in which we support students to navigate their unique journeys and explore challenges, celebrate successes, and create meaningful change in order to achieve their goals. Jazz approaches therapy from an integrated lens, tailored to meet each student's unique lived experiences and current concerns. She values collaboration, humor, and exploring different perspectives. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
So before we begin, I know you met some of us, but do you want to introduce yourself, Jazz?
Yeah, hi. My name is Jefferson. Great, thank you.
Nice to meet you.
So do you want to talk a little bit about your life going?
Sure. So I'm from upstate New York originally, and then moved to Connecticut when I was about 9 years old. I come from a Latin background. My mom is from Honduras and my dad is from Puerto Rico. And so I mainly grew up more with like the Puerto Rican culture of life, even though I'm closer to my mom's side of the family. That was like interesting. I don't know a lot of like the Honduran like traditions and the foods. My mom doesn't cook Honduran. She cooks pretty good. And so then I grew up in Hartford, Connecticut. Went to UConn for my undergraduate degree, and then went to school in Florida for my master's degree. Before Central, I worked at eating disorder clinic in Connecticut, and then I've been at Central for about 3.5 years at the counseling center. And if there's more that you'd like to know, it's pretty like a very
Yeah, it was
like
a good
quick,
rundown.
yeah, quick rundown.
So what like interested you to go?
So in high school, we had a health class, and one of the segments was mental health. And I remember our teacher bringing in a staff member from the high school, and she talks about her personal like history of like mental health, and then her son's mental health like background, and they just gave us like reading material. And so something that my professor had, or my teacher said, was like, oh, like be sensitive to the unknown, because you never really know like by looking at someone what somebody's like really going through. And that really like stuck to me. So kind of piqued my interest of like, well, there's probably people having hard times. Like I had a hard time moving to Connecticut and like leaving my school and friends in New York. So I was like, I wish I would have had somebody to talk to. I'd like to be somebody that people could talk to. And so it'd really been just a straight track to becoming a therapist from that class in high school. Everything kind of like just led up to being counselor.
Thank you.
What do you like about your job? Like, what do you find most interesting about it?
Oh, I like a lot of things about my job, especially working on a college campus. I really enjoy working with like the age population, because a lot of people think that it's just young adults, but I've worked with students who are 17 to in their 60s, and they're still pursuing their degrees. And so it's just like the diversity in the people that I get to work with. And also just it's very rewarding to build a trusting relationship with like students and have them open up about things that maybe they haven't been able to before, or with other people, and just being a safe like space for students from all walks of life, and that they can come and just like be themselves and get support for whatever it is that they're going through. So I would say like the diversity of like who I get to work with, and the concerns that people come with are also very diverse. And then just like being that space for people is like really rewarding.
Is there like a hardest part of your job or something like that?
I guess the hardest part would be when I, as a counselor, can see maybe the potential in a student, and they can't yet see it for themselves, and I'm just like, oh, but you have it, it's right there. And then, for whatever factors may not have like the resources yet, they might not be ready yet to make like those changes, or, there just could be so much more going on. So sometimes it could be difficult to really like believe in the student, but they don't quite see it for themselves. It's like, we can't do it for you, but like, I want you to do it. So sometimes that's like really hard. When you like want it for them more than what they can do at that moment.
Has there been like a common like, I guess, like problem or stressor you see like the kids coming to you for like to talk to their help?
Yeah, so the common and just like mental health on like a college campus are things like anxiety, depression, sleep issues, relationship issues. We see a lot of histories of like different types of trauma. Grief and loss is pretty big. Identity, whether that be through their like career choices or through orientation, culturally. Depression is a big one. Eating disorders are common. And a lot of like social aspects. So some social anxiety, or not feeling comfortable kind of like building like relationships or friendships. It's like a really big one too. So a lot of people feeling disconnected or lonely, which is heartbreaking.
Like, do you like help students like based on their college experience or university experience?
So that's a good question. I went to school several years ago, so I feel like a lot of the times the students are teaching me about what it's like to be a student now. And sometimes I might say, oh yeah, when I was in school, things were like this. But I know that my experiences can be very completely different than someone else's. So it's more about learning from the student as to like how they're experiencing like their college life, because it has been many years since I've been in school. So I don't know if it always like would relate. Some of this, similar concerns like the homesickness, sure, I can relate to that. But I might have experienced it differently than the person I'm working with. So it's more about learning what their experience is and then teaching them, and then teaching me about it. Can I ask you guys a question? What do you guys do for like your own mental health? Like, what are things that you guys do to kind of like manage stress, or to kind of balance some of the responsibilities you have?
I feel like if I'm super stressed, going to the gym usually helps me like clear my head, just calm down a little bit.
Right.
It's usually just music. I always have my headphones in. Whenever I feel like I'm stressed or whatever, I just put my headphones, watch everything out.
Are you someone that likes music that speaks to how you're like feeling or what you're going through, or something that would like do the opposite, like make you feel the opposite? Like if you're angry, do you listen to a song that might be like a little bit more angsty, or do you try to listen to more like upbeat music?
I think it's a variety. Depends on the day.
Okay. Great.
I'd say for like super stressed. Everything talks to each other. Yeah.
Great. You have anything?
I think they just watching like documentaries and stuff like that. That kind of so it gets me out of the worrying ass about
Yes.
stuff.
Yes, that's great. Those are all really great like strategies and tools. And sometimes it's good to have a variety too. Some things may not always be like available.
What do you like to do?
I'm obsessed with my dog, so let's just like roll on the ground with her. Or go for like I like to go for walks. So like even you might you guys are ever around campus, I'll like on my lunch break, like get out of the office just to get some air and walk around campus. So I like going for walks. Sometimes I like listen to music too. Even if it's just like the same album over and over, just it's like comforting and so yes, I'll play with my dog. Or I'll like go for a walk. Try to go to bed on time. Like I'm a very early sleeper. So I'm like, that's important for me, just to go to bed on time.
Are there any like days of your job where like it's just too much?
Yeah, quite often. So on days where it feels like the day is just like jam packed with whether it be like meetings, like staff meetings that we like have from the office or meeting with students, and it feels like okay, now I'm going like from one thing to the other, then I don't feel like I have enough time to like prepare for that or to kind of just like switch the mindset. I have to, and I make it work. But to kind of give myself like that, to not have like that breathing room to say, okay, like this was this person's session, and now to nicely transition to the next person because people come in with different things. Sometimes it feels like okay, like I have to be present for that person and not like have them like miss out on their time and that attention. Sometimes it can be hard just to like be there like mentally, not quick transition. But yeah, it happens.
That, that reminds me of when we had someone come speak. I think it was last month during Mondays, and she was talking about like vicarious trauma. So I was, I'll explain it because I think you guys, I don't think you guys are here for that one. But it's pretty much like listening to other people's trauma, like can like cause trauma for you, I guess, if I'm explaining that right. So how is that something that you do like handle?
So I think early on in my career, I like found the use of like supervision. So speaking to like my supervisor about any kind of cases that maybe like touched my heart more. So I think I do a good job in a general sense, like keeping things like, okay, this is like work. And then, once I'm home, then I have to kind of shut work off and do my things for myself or, for my household. But then there are some experiences or people's like life stories that are like it just like really impact you. So utilizing like supervision is something that I do like on a weekly basis. Like our director, I think he may have spoken to the group on one of the Mondays, Dr. Russo. He values that also. So like all those counselors have like weekly supervision with him to kind of talk about anything that comes up in our sessions or any troubles that we might be having, kind of like taking like things home. So that speaking to like just like other professionals too. So sometimes like us counselors kind of support each other and it's like, oh my God, I know this is a confidential space. So like not let me tell you just like about this case, and sometimes they can help us see things in different perspectives or remind us to like practice self-care. So we really lean on each other too, which is like awesome to work with like the people at the center because they're all really great. The supervision and then leaning on like the other counselors is like awesome because they're therapists too, so they can help me and we help each other.
Did you notice, sorry,
I do.
after COVID, did you notice a rise in mental health? Like more, maybe students needing more support?
COVID was an interesting time, and I feel like at least the people that I met with, it was a bit split. For some people, a lot of their stressors went away because they're like, a lot of my stressors were being on campus, were interacting, were socially, was having so much on my plate, and then COVID kind of took some of those things away. So they're like, I'm living my best life. And it's like, wow, great. And then some people did have like a hard time where if they had to like go back home and let's say that wasn't the best environment for them, or if they were struggling learning online, a lot of those things kind of like popped up. So being like socially isolated, people like losing loved ones too, was difficult. So I think it was, at least for my students that I worked with, it was like mixed. Because I had some people really thriving. Like they're like, this is the best I've done in my semesters here. I'm connecting with my family. I'm getting the rest that I need, and my schedule is like great. I love online learning. And then some people had like a really hard time. So it was mixed for my students, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, it is. But some people did better.
Mm-hmm.
Really interesting.
How did you all manage like the pandemic? Were you, I don't know if everyone's yours, but were you here? Yeah. Past that. Okay.
I was in college, but
Mhm.
I didn't go to undergrad here. I went to
Okay.
undergrad in actually upstate New York.
Really?
Siena College, have you heard of it? It's like in the Albany area.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It's small.
I'm way more north.
Okay. Yeah, okay. All my friends from New York are like, it's not upstate, but like they
Yeah,
call it the
yeah.
upstate area.
I'm like, I could keep going for 3 more hours.
Gotcha. So it was my junior year, like we got a second. So it was definitely hard.
Did anyone like thrive during that time, or was it a difficulty?
I found it very
Mhm.
difficult.
Yeah, it was hard. I was less active and then I gained weight and then I got sick and then I lost my family member. Oh. It's crazy.
It was a fever dream,
The days just not cool.
right?
It's like,
It's just like Groundhog Day, every day the same.
did you like prefer meeting people online?
Hmm. Again, that was mixed because it was hard to do the video calls because just like you're meeting someone through a screen for the first time and then you're like, well, tell me about all your like your personal like stressors, and you're like, it felt a little bit impersonal. But then for some students, they were in the comfort of their house or in their rooms, and so they felt more comfortable being able to share a little bit more. For some students, it was more complicated because they didn't have the confidentiality aspect of it. So that was also nice. I like both. I like that we still can do both because it allows us to serve like way more students. Like for example, especially like during the breaks or for like commuters, the fact that we like still can do telehealth like allows more people to like use our services so they don't have to like come to campus like they did before the pandemic. So I like that we now have the students have the choice now.
I'm glad she kept it as an option.
Yes, me too, because I'd be meeting with students who are like, let's say have an internship only, and they're like in Danbury, and it's like, I'm not gonna make you come to class, I mean, to the office just to meet, like, we can just do it virtually. So that's nice, but it can be both, so.
I like the access part of that,
Mhm.
but I've noticed like one of the cons is if like you're meeting with someone who's like nervous and you can't see their body language sometimes. So like if it's just on their face, if they're like twirling their hands, if it's not something you notice. So
I would
that makes
say
it
with a little bit more experience, you do notice.
hard.
You start to pick up on like facial expressions or the way that somebody's like, you know, presenting or answering questions, that you can pick up on things after having a little bit like more time with it. You start to kind of pick things up. You like adjust.
For a lot of college students, especially first gen students, it's called imposters. What are some like tips or like advice you'd give to those students of like not overcoming, but like going through?
Yeah, definitely.
What's the syndrome again? Imposter.
Yeah, so and guys, feel free to share your understanding of it. But it's when, and it can happen in any kind of space where someone feels that they are not like qualified enough to be in that space. So like, let's say a college student doesn't feel like they are smart enough or knowledgeable enough to be in the engineering program, let's say, or at like a new job, at an internship that they feel like out of place or that they don't belong. But they were able to get into the programs, or they did get the job, they were offered the job. So the facts of it says, yes, you are qualified to be here, you do belong here, but they might feel internally that that they don't. So one thing is to check the fact or the situation, right? Is that kind of thinking of like all the steps that it did take to get to where you are, that you know, student went through the application process and went, let's say they're like senior or something, they've already have 4 years or 3.5 years of college experience to be, you know, where they are, and that not everyone goes into different environments knowing everything already too. So giving yourself some grace that even though, like, even after graduation, we're all like still students, like there's still things that I'm learning about, you know, being a counselor and the changing world of mental health, so that you don't need to know everything all at once, and giving yourself some like that grace and patience. And then also thinking of just like ways to not give so much power to those doubts or to those like negative thoughts, but trying to find it more neutral, and if you can, more positive thoughts to say, okay, well, I may not feel super confident, but I'm going to try my best, right? Or I do deserve to be here. So kind of thinking of just like those positive like statements, because our words are very powerful, and our brain tends to have a negative bias anyways. So we kind of have to work it out like a muscle and train it to think differently. And that does take a bit more of like commitment and intention and effort, but it is possible to kind of convince our brain, like, no, those thoughts are not accurate. You know, somebody does belong there and deserve to be there and is worthy and qualified and knowledgeable enough to be there because they're here.
So you recommend that for students to look into positive affirmation or something?
Yes, definitely. Whether that is like statements, you know, on your notes, whether that's like voice memos that you listen to every day, whether that's like a meditation that can kind of help guide you through it, a mantra. Sometimes it could just be like one word that you repeat to yourself or that you have posted somewhere. But yes, our words are very powerful. And so if we can reframe those thoughts and kind of challenge them, it can make a huge impact on like confidence and self-esteem.
How long have you been at CCC?
3.5 years. I'll be 4 years in April.
Did you ever see yourself working with younger kids, like elementary, middle school?
So in my first job, I started off as an adolescent clinician there. So that was with like high schoolers and some middle schoolers, not necessarily elementary school. And from that experience, I can tell it is not for me. Because the difficulty is, because they are younger, a lot of the work is with the parents. Sometimes the parents are not as open to feedback or support, or are not able to, for whatever reason, to like implement some of these changes. Let's say they just work too much, or they have other kids that they're like helping support, or other family members that they're helping take care of. But they might really not have the availability or resources to support the student having a hard time. So that was a tough thing for me. So I like 18 and older, because they can kind of, for the most part, do things and make decisions for themselves.
Like your education?
14
Mhm. Yeah, so I went to UConn, but I transferred there my sophomore year. I went to school in North Carolina, had like culture shock, and I was like, get me out of here. It was so country, and I was like, no, I'm very like New England type of being. So then I went to UConn, was involved in a number of things at UConn, like you guys are, like worked as like a student. I studied psychology. I was part of like a minority like research group for psychology. I joined like a multicultural sorority. I worked and then.
What was the culture shock in South Carolina? Was the environment very different?
It was very different in the sense that, and this might sound terrible, but they were very like overtly like polite and like friendly, like strangers just like waving and saying hi to me, and I'm like, I don't know you. Like, why are you talking to me? So that like really threw me off. It wasn't a diverse school. So just even in the like friendships that I made, like I think I maybe knew in the year that I met there, like one other Latin person. So that for me, I was like, I had grown up in Hartford, so I was like surrounded by different cultures, and this was the school I went to was not very diverse in that way. Culturally not
Did you
diverse.
feel accepted, or was there racism involved, or?
I didn't experience any racism, I don't think, but I think it did limit me in the spaces that I like went to. So like I was part of a community service like floor. So I kind of had like a group of like already that I could like interact with, but I think it impacted me like branching out. Whereas like when I got to UConn, they had a Latin American center there. They had cultural centers. My other school did not have cultural centers at all. So it's like, okay, like this feels a little bit more welcoming and that there's like spaces for people of different cultures. So yeah, it's like very like Southern, very like slower paced. Like, let's go.
And I noticed that when I drove to the South Center, everybody was super friendly. They say hi to you, like.
Right, which is great.
Yeah,
That's
it's the
lovely,
thing,
but
yeah.
it caught me off guard.
I thought they were so nice, yeah.
Oh, I think you're muted.
Thanks, Millie.
Is
You
there
know.
volume control on these controllers?
We can't hear you.
Well, that's because I had my volume's completely up. Yeah. So I lived in South Carolina for a year, Jessica, and Southerners and many Latin Americans are like, well, in New England, people are so unfriendly. No one speaks to you. But the fact that someone speaks to you on the street or says hello or is chatty, yeah, does not mean they're nice or that, in the South, when somebody starts with bless your heart, you know that what's coming is like a stab, right? Yeah. That may very well insult multiple generations of your family, right? Which, that phrase in Spanish and Portuguese that somebody is mal educado, right? Impolite, but it also implies that like your family didn't raise you right. Right? It's just, but bless your heart, bless her heart. Her mother just never told her that she needed to dress properly to leave the house or needed makeup to go out. No, really. Can be very, very nasty.
Yeah, very like passive aggressive.
Yeah, and especially to anybody from the North.
Yeah. So after a year, and I did well at school. I was like in the honors program there, and I did well, but I was like, this just the outside of the academics, the like student life was just not for me. But
so what school were you at?
University of North Carolina, Greensboro. So not even like the cool Tar Heel one. It was like a branch, and
yeah,
terrible decision for me personally.
Yeah, well, it's a long way away.
Yes, then that also just like the homesickness, even though I didn't want to go to UConn because a lot of people from my high school went to UConn. I'm like, oh, I just want to expand. I went to a very small high school. I was like, I just want something different. That was too different.
Yeah.
So UConn went well, and then I decided to leave again and go to grad school in North Florida. also still very southern and country, and I'm just like, I really can't escape this. But at least I was next to the beach, so like I kept my sanity for 2 years. Then I was like, I gotta go.
In-
The day
in
after
Jacksonville?
graduation.
In
In
Jacksonville?
Jacksonville, yep. Pretty, but also very like still very southern.
And huge naval base.
Yes, yep. So a lot of military folks there, which can also be a bit of a culture shock since I didn't grow up with any military background. But that program was great. I love my school.
Oh. So I know that we were talking the other day, and some of the students have been helping organize, right, the December 9th event. And Jessica is going to make a short presentation on the way that status issues sometimes impact student mental health. And I just wondered if you could help us understand that a little bit so that we know kind of what to be prepared for, or, what
Yeah,
kinds of, I
absolutely.
mean, without sharing any
Right,
intimate
right.
details, what kinds of things do you see?
So a lot of it is anxiety and depression is the main thing, and in the sense of a lot of the students kind of carrying this stress of one, staying like under the radar, but still wanting to advance in their lives and in their careers. But let's say if they are undocumented, having such limited prospects for like jobs and just that uncertainty, and the unknown of, okay, like, can I like sustain myself? Students also sometimes like working multiple jobs to like help support not just like their families, but themselves. So trying to balance that responsibility with then, trying to be like students also is like a lot for them. And then kind of getting down about, all the stressors and that how difficult that things are compared to their peers, which, we try to discourage comparing, but it is something that's their reality. And it's something that is like something that they're living through. And really like validating that, yeah, it is a lot harder for those students. But a lot of it is like anxiety of like that unsureness and feeling almost like there's like a blockage to their like advancement in their lives. Because we see students who are part of like DACA and can kind of like work, but then some are not even in that program. So it's difficult.
Yeah, it's a real mess, but I'm glad that we're doing this. So,
Yes.
Two of the students in the center are our liaisons to Connecticut Students for a Dream.
Oh, great.
So if you need any resources for them or what, and they set up a meeting for us last week. So Connecticut Students for a Dream is going to be at the event on the 9th.
Yeah, it's going to be great. I'm looking forward to that for sure.
Yeah. Well, we are too, if we manage to pull it off. I don't know. There's a lot going on.
But it be caused by having this threat by ICE and the mentality that some people have against
Definitely.
where undocumented anxiety alone.
Yes.
Having that.
Yes. And then I feel like then that leads into, I've had students kind of have to isolate themselves and not build relationships or have trouble trusting, people because they're like, well, I don't know what your position is on that matter, or I don't know, let's say this relationship, friendship, whatever doesn't work out, like, will you, rat me out or, be like discriminatory against them. So a lot of it, so yes, there is that anxiety in themselves, and then that kind of leads into just like the supports that they can build. Sometimes they're not comfortable and they're like isolated and alone, which then they don't have anyone to talk to, and that increases the depression, that increases the anxiety. So it's like this terrible cycle.
Yeah, like, for the students that are at CCSU, how would they know who to reach out to, which teachers are trustable? That's something that we need to figure out and be able to provide them with.
The resource information, and I think maybe that's a bit of what the committee is trying to do, and trying to
We're
have
working
like,
on that.
like a bigger face of like who you can reach out to for what. So like our office is confidential, so we literally cannot share anything without the students' like permission, unless we're like subpoenaed by, you know, the judge, and even then we like only share what is like a necessity. We don't overshare. But unless we have like a court order, we cannot tell anyone anything. So like sometimes students feel safer, you know, talking to us. But we don't have all of the information. We can't do everything. So it's really great that we're identifying like those people to send students to. Because I knew that like last semester I had a student, I was like trying to scramble to find them resources. And I'm like, I don't even know where to look. I don't even know where to send you. So it's great.
Mhm. Well, that's what happened when Stacy, so this committee kind of got going because, as I explained the other day, one of our student workers had a family member in trouble. And I was trying to figure out, you know, basically how we could support them, or what resources there were within the university to support, not to do anything about the person being deported, but to support the
Right.
student
Yes.
who was documented but struggling. Yeah.
Right.
And, you know, I gathered a few people together, and I discovered that a lot of folks on campus who I assumed understood the whole business were really kind of clueless, or had, you know, didn't know one another. And from there, Stacy and I got talking, and the next thing you know, we now have a committee of what, 12 people, 14 people, and they all have different responsibilities. Yeah. So, so Katie was instrumental in this, Millie, and a couple of the other students as well. And I'm really in making our connections with Connecticut Students for a Dream. And so I'm really hopeful that we can move this issue forward.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely. A very real issue.
Yeah.
And for the even students that we don't know about yet.
So anyway, I'm sorry, but I have to get ready for class. Yeah, but thank you for coming.
Of course, thanks
Yeah.
for having me.
Oh, look, I know what's for dinner tonight, I guess. Yeah. Did they send us a more appropriate amount of food this time?
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
Usually it was too much.
Oh, really?
Usually they send us enough
Better
that,
than enough.
no, really, like Friday, we're still trying to get rid of leftovers.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks. Nice to see you all. Bye.
Bye-bye. I think that too much is better than not enough, because then it's gonna take some.
Thank you for joining us.
Of course, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
We have something for you. I just have to grab it.
That is not necessary. That's so sweet. Thank you. Yes, I'd love to. Oh, that's
Does anybody
lovely.
have any last questions?
You guys had asked good questions. Thank you.